is Xiangchen from Fudan University. The title of his talk will be Qinqin, Between the Same and the Other. Please welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Roger, and thank you for your invitation and invite me to join such a wonderful conference. I think maybe I misunderstood the themes of this conference. Don't formulate a minimalist morality for planetary order, but just introduce how Asian China found out a minimal starting point for the morality. I think maybe it's also an interesting topic. In my paper, I also mentioned the livingness. I think in some sense, livingness also formulates a kind of a minimalist morality, facing the other. Everyone can feel the other, and he thinks this is what the acts happen, take place. This kind of, I think, this kind of minimalist morality is different from the other one. So maybe we can have a lot of minimalist morality, but everyone they are different to each other. So I think their value orientation is also different. So maybe it's easy to formulate a minimalist morality in an abstract sense, but if we think about their mechanism, maybe it's a different, and it's also complicated, within them. In order to understand such a construction of the morality in Asian China, I just borrow from Levinas as a theory, and Levinas gave a criticism of the Western philosophy tradition, and then he developed his own philosophy for minimalist morality, and contrary to the formulate minimalist morality for whole humans, I am presenting here is that the Greek, Jews, and the Chinese tradition have their own framework for built a minimal moral theory. So what is important is their framework, and their frameworks different, but maybe their principle is the same, but their implementation is so different. So this is, I think, the most interesting phenomena. So in this sense, maybe we have no such a universal minimal theoretical framework for the whole human beings. And the framework is constructed in their own cultural tradition, in their own cultural background. So Levinas gave a criticism to the ontological framework of Western philosophy, and he even believed that such a ontological tradition has a tendency towards violence and the war, and even the freedom of the subject in the modern subject is a violation of the other. So he gave another way to develop his own ethical theory, and he think the theoretical, the ethics is the first philosophy, not ontological is the first philosophy, and facing the the other, facing the face of the other is the starting point of our morality. Is the starting point of our responsibility. And so in Levinas's philosophy, he particularly emphasized the need we need to respect the alterity of the other. But for the Chinese tradition, I think it's different from this two theory, Western philosophy or the Jewish or the Levinas theory. They has their the most important things is they have their own the metaphysical framework. So because of this different framework, so they have a different standpoint. I think for the Chinese metaphysical framework, I think it's different from the ontological one. So Roger invented a new term, how to pronounce this? Theotology. Theotology. it's I think it's a new terms, yeah, to describe the Chinese metaphysical framework. I think under this framework there are two core concept and the two core words. One is the Shenzhen. It's difficult to translate, and maybe it's a endless creation of life, or to focus on the change of the whole world. And another one is the Qinqin. It's also a difficult one. I think we can maybe its meaning is the love between the parents and the children. So my paper is focused on this Qinqin. Yeah, Qinqin is, I think, it's different from the eros. There are many discussions in Western philosophy, and the philia. The Aristotle's concept, and also the agape. It's a Christian concept. So Qinqin is a love. Is a love between the parents and the children. And in Chinese tradition, we regard this love as a prototype. Yeah. So why we pick up this one as a core word, as a core concept? I think because of this, we have a Shenzhen medical framework. So in this way, the Qinqin is also a minimal one, and it's also a universal one. It's everyone can accept it, but only in Chinese tradition we base on it and develop our own morality. So, although we talk about the minimalist morality, but I think they're based on their own framework. So is it possible on this global or the planet scale to find out a universal minimal one, or the universal the standpoint? I think it's a big challenge. So, for example, for Qinqin, it's a minimal standpoint, a natural emotion, and it's a kinship affection, and everyone can experience it. But it's if we regard it as a universal one, I don't think it's a universal one. Only in Chinese culture, we regard this one as a standpoint. And why Chinese tradition regard Qinqin as the most important one? I think it's because of in Chinese culture tradition, we have a moral methodology. which one is the, we say that the Tao is not far from one. And if we just want to find some starting point, then extend it to, to the, so we, from the Qinqin to the filial piety, from filial piety to the benevolence, and then from benevolence to a universal level for the whole world. So this is the way. It's not the like the Plato's the dual world, the ideal one or the sensible world, the ideal world or sensible world. But for the Chinese tradition, we just extend it from your nearby, and this standpoint, if we based on it, we can develop some the moral theory, and different standpoint has their own advantage, maybe based on the Qinqin. So we not emphasize the otherness of the other, or the alterity of the other, but the intimacy between the peoples, or under the whole world, we are brothers, or we are very sensibility to the warm world. So I think this is a good thing for the Chinese moral theory. But it's a special one, yeah. So in this sense, the Qinqin is a minimal and a common emotion, but the virtue, filial piety, based on this emotion, is a cultural one. And so maybe we have a minimal morality, and can accept it by everyone. But if we think about their cultural background, maybe it's still a cultural one. It's a local one. Yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Professor Sun. Now let's open up for questions. Okay, Professor Ames.
Professor Sun, last semester in my class, we read parts of your Lun Jia book, and wanted to pursue the idea that you are talking about minimalist morality, that your criticism of Levinas and Heidegger all has to do with the insufficient relationality. And when you talk about Xiangchen Lun, as endless production of life, that Jiaoting Yang talks about Chinese philosophy is Jia Gan, setting the root, and then Xiangjiang, growth.
Yeah.
And so morality is growth in relationships, nothing more. It's growth in relationships. And when I travel around, I go to Italy or I go to America, and I talk about Chinese and Xiao, people get angry. They look at me and they say to me, in their face, they say, "We care about family too, So I really do think that this Qinqin or Jiating Ganqing and so on, however we say it, is really something that it's a consensus, in the sense of a shared feeling. Like consensus doesn't mean one thing; it means a shared feeling. And I don't think that we can find a shared feeling anywhere else than rooted in the family and grown from the family. So if you won't accept your Qinqin as minimalist morality, I will.
Thank you, thank you, your comments. And I think you know, in some sense, we talk about the utilitarianism. They are also have some minimalist one, and everyone can accept it. If we talk about the Kantian's philosophy, and everyone can accept it, and the Levinas facing the other is also universal and a common one, and the Chinese Qinqin, no problem. It's you know, everyone can accept it. There are many you know, minimalized one, and the people can accept it. But only Chinese culture, they develop their moral theory, they develop their moral philosophy based on Qinqin. So maybe for the you know, Christian culture, they are based on Holy Family. It's different from the natural family or the natural affection Qinqin. So so on some level, it's okay. It's easy to find someone, and it's also universal one, and the people can accept it. But on the other side, only some culture, only some civilization based on a special starting point. So people can understand each other, but the culture is different. The civilization is difficult. It's different. They are still dangerous, you know, you know, the violence or the value, the war between the different civilizations, although they are all they are all human beings.
Okay, yeah. Let's work on some more questions. Okay, so since no one raised their hands, maybe I will ask Professor Sun. So you mentioned Dr. M's zootology. You the endless creation of life. But when you talk about Qinqin, you didn't talk about, or you didn't really emphasize the creation or production through the familial relationship. You emphasize the love between parents and kids, something like that. So you didn't mention Qinqin. For example, maybe you should, if you follow Shenzhen, then you should mention the kind of developing dimension rather than inside the family.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, and there are very close connection between the Shenzhen and the Qinqin, because Shenzhen not only the endless creation of the life, but also means generation of generation. So this framework is emphasized on the generation after generation. So in this sense, why Qinqin is most important, because Qinqin can make a close connection between the you know, generations. So maybe, you know, for the Greek, ancient Greek philosophy, wisdom, temper, temper, and the courage and justice is important, because they focus on the polis. So this is for value virtue is very important, you know, for the polis. But for the Chinese philosophy or the Chinese value, being between the generations is the most important. So in this sense, filial piety, Qinqin, the love between the different generations is most important. So in this sense, why Shenzhen and Qinqin have a very close connection with them.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. And some more questions? Okay, Professor Liu, yeah.
Thank you, Professor Sun, for your presentation, and I did learn a lot from what you said. And because of my lack of knowledge, to be honest, with the very concept of Xiangchen and Qinqin, just by reading a paper and also listening to presentations, one of the questions which puzzles me is that when I was reading Shenzhen, I find that the very concept of life there is a very inclusive one. It's not only related to this kind of immediate interpersonal relations and this kind of lives, but it's also about, in a way, this kind of collaborative living, mutually kind of benefiting growth, not only between humans, but also amongst every kind of being around us, in a way. But when we talk about Qinqin, it seems to be suddenly the very concept become very kind of specifically narrowed down to intergenerational or human-to-human relations. So my question is that if the very concept of Shengsheng is such a ontologically inclusive one, how can we keep that kind of inclusiveness in terms of ontology and apply it to Qinqin?
Thank you. And it's a good question. And you know, in Chinese philosophy, we also say the Tian Dao and Ren Dao, and the Tian Dao and the Ren Shi. And the Tian Dao is we can call it an ontological framework, you know, for the whole world. Or sometimes we not call it ontological because ontol is being. It's a Greek one, so we can call it metaphysical one or cosmology framework. Just as you said, it's everything. It's not only the human being. But if we, from this perspective, to understand the human world, what is important is the endless life, the endless, you know, the generation after generation, because you know every civilization they will pursue the immortality. Maybe for the Christianity, you facing the Jesus Christ, then you have your immortal life, and your afterlife, and maybe for the Buddhism, it also has such a picture. But you know, for the Chinese philosophy, they have no such beyond the world or their your endless life. So what is important is is family, is to keep your continuity of your life. So in this sense, the family is important, and the Qinqin is important, and the filial piety is the first value, you know, for the whole system.
Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Yeah. Some more questions? Okay, yeah. Yeah, so we come to Chinese philosophy and we talk about Confucianism. According to Professor Ames, he just mentioned that the Confucian moral value would be the minimalist value, and for all human beings. So it seems also very reasonable when we come to talk about this 天下 ideas. We are all human beings. We all have families. So the Confucian value of being filial, loving between generations seems very reasonable to many people. Okay, some more questions? Okay, the hands.
Let me ask one question that I'm puzzled about in your maybe you do this somewhere else, but one of the sort of most important ideas, I think, in Xiao as intergenerational transmission is the notion of embodiment. You know, the importance of the body. Have you done much work on that? On like when you think of each generation, you know, physically we inherit the generation that has gone before, but that's the most superficial. Like in terms of our values, our language, our technologies, our mores, and so on. That all of these are embodied from one generation to the next. And so it seems to me that the idea of embodiment is not it needs to be you know, sort of given a more central place. What do you think about that idea, Sinlaoshi?
Thank you. Thank you for your question. And you know, when we read about the Xiaojing is, I think it's very interesting when we talk about the human existential structure. It's not just from the individual, from the ego, from the subject. And the first sentence about the Xiaojing says is that your skin, your hair is just from your parents. So the beginning is not the individual, the atom. It's the starting point. It's the focus on the continuity of the of your life. So I think this is everyone can accept it. It's no one you know, born from the stone. Everyone, you know, it's your parents' children, and you give your life. So the Xiaojing and the first sentence is your hair and your skin are all from your parents. So regard this one as a starting point. I think the picture is totally different from the individual one or the, you know, subjectivity one. Yeah. So I think this is very important, but different culture, I think they are focused on different moments. Maybe for the Chinese culture, they are focused on this one and based on this one, and then develop the Chinese culture. But for the other civilization, they are based on other moments. Other maybe the individual or the yawns or the god or everything. So I think everyone is the universal one, but you can only select one. you can select one as your basis.
Okay, some more questions? We still have some more minutes. Okay, Xinwei.
Yes, well, thank you, Professor, for the wonderful talk. I was actually thinking, and I want to address this question to both Professor Sun and Professor Ames, that it's about nature versus culture. So if we're arguing that Qinqin is Chinese culture, and then like we may find, like in my understanding, of course, not as a professional philosopher, like I would think like maybe we will find some difficulty to push it outside to Chinese, like to the outside circle of Chinese culture. But rather, if Qinqin, can we possibly find a way to argue that Qinqin is actually the nature that we can find across culturally, and we can reference each other, and that maybe, you know, the unit of minimum morality that then we can apply later. What's both of your thoughts on this? Thank you.
Roger, you're first.
I think Xinwei is a perfect question, and that is that The Chinese don't have to persuade Italians that Qinqin is the most fundamental value. Chinese don't have to persuade Hans-Georg Müller that Qinqin is the most fundamental value. That I think most cultures really begin from I think the family is maybe the highest value in the human experience, just generally, except for Kant, maybe. So I think that that we can take your Qinqin and we don't need to proselytize. All we have to do is to remind the Italians that Qinqin is really fundamental. So I think Xinwei's point is very well taken. It's not culture, it's nature.
And of course, it's a nature. Yeah, it's a very general one, and every one can accept it. It's a fundamental value. But you know, it's a very interesting. In Chinese culture, we say that how to say, 礼文来学，不闻枉教. If you have a good thing, you do not want to give others, then that it's a good thing. That everyone, if they know it, they will come to here to study. So it's no missionary tradition to give other people's good news. It's just, I have good. If you want, just come here to learn. So we say that the 礼文来学，不闻枉教. And another one is if we say the Qinqin, of course there are many limitations of the how to say the how to partiality. How to say the partiality?
Partiality.
Partiality, yeah, partiality, yeah. It's a partiality of the Qinqin, partiality of the benevolence, partiality of the pure piety. And so another point is very important, that the education, cultivation, and learn how to extend it. So there are 2 points. One is the natural one. Another one is the how to extend it, how to you cultivate yourself, then to extend your love to other people. So it's different from the David Hume. David Hume is also founded the partiality of the benevolence. Then he said that this is the natural one. We have an artificial one, that is the justice. So we are faced with the same and natural phenomena, but give a different solution here. This one is the education, culture, cultivation. This one is the justice, make a justice law. So it's a different way, the same phenomena. Yeah.
Okay, Professor Miller seems to have questions.
Whoops, sorry. Yes, Roger, you are right. I also have nothing against Qinqin. And so but I can't hold back, sorry. Of course, there's totally nothing wrong with Qinqin, right? And it may well be that it's like natural even, as Xinwei says. But the problem, of course, is once you start moralizing it. I mean, once you start moralizing Qinqin with a lot of moral communication and, you know, establishing this cultural system of Qinqin, then you get closer and closer to ruining it. That's the problem. That's why I would still say Qinqin is fine. It's great, just as long as it isn't too moral.
Chapter 18 and 19 of Dao De Jing.
Yes. Yes.
Position? Yeah.
Yeah, and the how to say the Qing, you know, just I say that we need to extend it. So Qinqin is a narrow one. It's a natural one, but it's if we want to moralize, you just base on it and then to extend it. Then it is a moral moral sentiment. It's a moral. You can develop a moral theory or philosophy. So Qinqin is just a basis for all this one. So it's Qinqin itself is not. I don't think it's a moral morality. It's a moral one. Yeah.
Okay. Thank Professor Sun for a great talk. So how about let's welcome Professor Ames for your response to Professor Miller, and also a kind of conclusion for this section. Now it's about 11 in the midnight already in Hawaii. It's very, very late, and you never stay too late.
Too late.
But absolutely worth the time getting up and you know, being part of this this panel. I mean, all very wonderful. I have a chance to make my presentation. My presentation is very similar to Sun Laoshir's presentation, and so I will continue this argument. I want to try to persuade Hans-Georg that moral interpretation of the phenomenon is the production of new meaning, that Xiangchen Lun is all about producing meaning, that that Qinqin is all about producing meaning. And that is the substance of morality. Morality is not some kind of commandment or some kind of rule or principle or ideal. Those are dangerous kinds of moralities. I agree with Hans-Georg and Liu Laoshi that that these are not the kind of moralities we want. But the idea of growth in meaning as morality, maybe that's something that we can think about. So I think we've had a wonderful session. Thank you very much, Haiming. And the next session begins in about 2.5 hours. And so I can have a little bit of sleep.
Yeah, you're gonna stay up.
I'm gonna stay up.
Wow.
These are too good. I'll see you at the next session.